Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tearing into some really fascinating source material. We're talking about research that involved going undercover for years.
Yeah, the original researcher, he immersed himself in the world of what he calls compliance professionals. So sales operators, advertisers, telemarketers.
Right, all to figure out one thing.
Yeah.
How do they get us to say yes?
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is to map out that psychology of persuasion. We're going to dissect 6 universal weapons of influence. These are the psychological shortcuts that professionals use to trigger our automatic and often unconscious agreement.
And we're jumping right in with a foundational concept, something drawn from, of all places, animal behavior. It's called the click-whir mechanism.
It sounds mechanical, and it is. It refers to these fixed action patterns, these complex sequences of behavior that are basically on autopilot.
Like a pre-programmed tape?
Precisely. A tape that just needs a single, sometimes really trivial trigger to get it to play.
The classic illustration for this is, well, it's a bit absurd. It's about a mother turkey.
Right. Now, you'd think maternal behavior is one of the strongest instincts in nature, yeah?
Absolutely.
And yet, researchers found it can be completely overridden by just one simple sound. They took a stuffed polecat, a natural predator, and pulled it towards a mother turkey.
And she attacks it furiously.
As you'd expect. But then they put in a tiny recorder inside the stuffed polecat that played the cheep, cheep sound of a baby turkey. And instantly, her behavior just flips. She accepts this predator, gathers it close, even cuddles it.
Wait, but she can still see the polecat, right? It doesn't make sense.
She does see it. But that maternal instinct tape is so efficient, it only requires that one click, the sound. Once she hears cheep, cheep, the mechanical whir of internal care just takes over. The visual evidence becomes, well, totally irrelevant.
And that's the big lesson for us, isn't it? Humans, faced with, the sheer complexity of modern life, we also rely on these pre-programmed tapes. We just don't have time to analyze everything.
These shortcuts usually work for us. They save a ton of mental energy. The danger, though, is that these very shortcuts are exploitable. Compliance experts practice a kind of psychological jujitsu. They use the power of these automatic principles against us, and often we don't even realize we're being pressured.
Okay, so let's unpack the first 2 of these weapons. We have the principle of contrast and the principle of reciprocation.
Perceptual contrast is fascinating because it's all about the order you present information. Basically, if the second thing you see is really different from the first, you perceive it as even more different than it actually is.
Right, like that old psych experiment. You put one hand in hot water, the other in ice water.
And then you plunge both into lukewarm water.
And it feels hot to one hand and cold to the other, even though it's the same water. Your perception is totally relative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And compliance pros use this constantly. Retail stores, for instance, they train their salespeople to sell the most expensive item first. Say, a $495 suit.
So after you've considered that, a $95 sweater, which is still a pretty expensive sweater.
It suddenly seems like a bargain. But if they did it the other way around, sell the cheap stuff first, that $495 suit would look even more outrageous.
You see this in real estate too, right? With the setup properties.
Oh, absolutely. They'll show you a couple of run-down, overpriced houses first. It's purely to set a low bar, so when they finally show you the property they actually want to sell, it looks amazing by comparison.
That's pretty sneaky. Okay, so let's move on to a much more powerful force, reciprocation. The rule of give and take.
This one is deep in our bones. It's an evolutionary thing. Sociologists say there is no human society on Earth that doesn't operate on this system of indebtedness. It's what allowed our ancestors to share resources.
And the really key insight from the research here is the power of an unsolicited favor. There's that famous Reagan study.
Right. In the study, subjects who got a small free Coke from someone ended up buying way more raffle tickets from that person later.
Even if they said they didn't like the guy.
The feeling of debt just steamrolled their personal feelings. The Hare Krishna Society figured this out perfectly. Their donations skyrocketed when they stopped just begging and started first giving you a small gift, like a flower. That act triggers the obligation.
You see it in politics, too. The sources talk about Lyndon Johnson, how he was so effective early in his presidency, he'd spent years stockpiling favors owed to him.
And then he just called them all in. That debt structure is power. And it's not just for gifts, it also applies to concessions. That gives us the door-in-the-face technique.
This is the classic tactic. You make a huge, totally outrageous request first.
One you know will be rejected.
Then you retreat to the smaller request you actually wanted all along. Your retreat is seen as a concession, so the other person feels they have to reciprocate by saying yes.
There's a really dark example of this in the Watergate analysis. G. Gordon Liddy initially proposed this insane $1 million plan with kidnapping and all sorts of things. Of course, John Mitchell and Jeb Magruder rejected it.
So Liddy comes back with a $500,000 plan. Still too much? They reject it again.
It was only that third final proposal, the $250,000 Watergate break-in, that finally got approved.
Why? Why did they say yes to what was still a stupid plan?
Because Liddy had made 2 concessions. They felt this sort of unspoken obligation not to send him away with nothing. They had to reciprocate his retreat. And it's telling that the one person who objected, Frederick LaRue, he'd missed those first 2 crazy proposals. He wasn't feeling that psychological debt.
Wow. That just perfectly illustrates how the starting point can completely warp your perception. This leads us right into the third weapon: commitment and consistency.
This is a huge one. It's our deep, almost obsessive need to be and to appear consistent with things we've already done or said. It's an efficiency shortcut. Once you make a choice, you can stop thinking so hard about it.
And sometimes it's more than just efficiency. It's a bit like self-delusion, like at the racetrack. Bettors become much more confident about their horse's chances after they've placed the bet.
Even though nothing has objectively changed, the commitment itself triggers the justification. It's a safe hiding place, as the sources put it. We saw this with that transcendental meditation lecture example.
Right. An expert logically dismantled the entire program in front of an audience.
And yet, right afterward, people rushed to the table to sign up. One person even admitted he had to do it right then, or else he'd go home and start thinking about the critique. He was using commitment to avoid thinking.
So the commitment is the click that starts the consistency whir. Right. And that's the core of the foot in the door technique.
Exactly. You start small to change how someone sees themselves. In the classic study, researchers asked people to sign a tiny petition for state beautification. That small commitment made them start to see themselves as public-spirited citizens.
And a few weeks later, when they were asked for a much bigger favor, to put a huge, ugly "Drive carefully" sign on their lawn,
the ones who'd signed the petition were far more likely to agree. They were staying consistent with their new self-image.
This is what car dealers do with the lowball tactic.
Masterfully. The dealer gets you to commit to a decision with a really tempting but temporary advantage, a great price, a high trade-in value.
So you decide, yes, I'm buying this car. And then you start to justify it to yourself. You think about the great gas mileage, how good it will look.
Your decision grows its own legs. Then the dealer comes back and, oops, the original incentive is gone. There was an error in the price, or the manager won't approve the trade-in. But you've already built all these other reasons to buy the car, so you stick with it.
It's not just about cars. The sources mentioned a woman, Sarah. She canceled her wedding because a new guy, Tim, made all these promises.
And when Tim broke those promises, she stayed with him. Why? Because she'd made this huge commitment, and to justify it, she started inventing new positive qualities in him that she'd never seen before.
And the more effort a commitment takes, the stronger it is. That's why initiation rites are often so severe, isn't it?
Right, from Thonga tribesmen to college fraternities, the beatings, the exposure to cold, it all serves a purpose. Research by Aronson and Mills showed that women who endured a severe initiation for a group later rated that group as highly valuable, even though it was designed to be incredibly boring.
The pain has to be justified.
Yes. The struggle makes the group seem more valuable. It's paradoxical, but it's vital for group cohesion.
Okay, that's a fascinating link. Let's pivot to the fourth weapon, social proof. This is the simple idea that we figure out what's correct by looking at what other people think is correct.
Another crucial shortcut, but it's so vulnerable to being faked. I mean, think about canned laughter on TV shows.
We all know it's fake.
We know it's fake, but it still works. It makes us laugh longer and rate the jokes as funnier. We just automatically respond to the sound of social approval.
But the real danger of social proof comes up when we're uncertain.
Exactly, that's when it gets scary. It can lead to what's called the pluralistic ignorance effect.
Yeah.
Imagine there's an emergency, but it's ambiguous. A loud crash outside, everyone looks around at each other.
And because everyone wants to seem cool and calm, they see everyone else doing nothing.
So they all mistakenly conclude it must not be an emergency, and nobody acts. This is what explains the horrifying Kitty Genovese case, where 38 people watched her being attacked over half an hour and did nothing.
It wasn't that they didn't care.
It wasn't apathy, it was psychological paralysis. They were all looking for social cues, and the cue they got was don't panic.
So the lesson for you, if you're ever in that situation, is to reduce the uncertainty. Be specific.
You have to single someone out. Point. You in the red coat, call 911. That breaks the spell. It removes all the ambiguity.
Now, the darkest side of this is the Werther effect. This is the finding that publicized suicides lead to copycat deaths.
Yes, including fatal car and plane crashes that spike right after the story breaks. And the data shows similarity is key. If a young person's suicide is in the news, you see a spike in wrecks involving young lone drivers. We imitate people who are like us.
Which brings us to Jonestown. It's a terrifying case study in social proof. Jim Jones engineered the perfect environment for it.
He moved his followers to a totally unfamiliar, uncertain jungle in Guyana. Their only point of reference, their only similar others, were the other members. When the order for self-destruction came, the compliance of the first few created this overwhelming social proof for everyone else that this was the correct thing to do.
Chilling. Okay, let's move quickly through the last two. The principle of liking. This one's simple. We say yes to people we know and like.
But liking can be manufactured. We tend to like people who are attractive, who compliment us, who are similar to us, and crucially, who cooperate with us.
Like the classic Tupperware party. You're not buying from a stranger, you're buying from your friend. It makes it really hard to say no.
And even flattery that you know is fake still works. But the most sophisticated version is creating cooperation. The whole good cop, bad cop routine.
Right, the bad cop creates the threat.
And the good cop defends you, seems to be on your side. Instantly, you like and trust the good cop, and you're ready to comply.
And finally, number 6, authority. Our deep-seated willingness to obey legitimate authority figures.
It's another shortcut. We're taught from birth to obey parents, teachers, bosses, and we respond automatically to the symbols of authority, not necessarily the substance.
Things like titles, clothes, expensive cars.
Yes. Think of the Milgram experiment. People were willing to deliver what they thought were lethal electrical shocks to another person simply because a guy in a white lab coat told them to. The sense of responsibility just gets transferred to the authority figure.
The sources mention a really frightening study in a hospital. Nurses were ordered over the phone by a doctor they'd never met to give a patient a clearly incorrect and dangerous dose of a drug.
And the vast majority of them went to do it. The single trigger of the title, doctor, was enough to override all of their professional training and judgment.
So this has been a whirlwind tour. We've got contrast, reciprocation, commitment, social proof, liking, and authority. What does this all mean for us today?
Well, the modern dilemma is that life is getting more complex, not less. We have to rely on these shortcuts more than ever, and that just makes us more vulnerable to people who know how to push these buttons.
So we need some defenses. The sources suggest 2 internal alarms. The first is what they call the stomach signal.
That's that immediate physical tightening in your gut when you realize you're being trapped into a decision you know is wrong. You just feel it. Your body is warning you before your brain has time to start making excuses.
We have to learn to trust that feeling, and maybe even call out the tactic, just to break the spell.
And the second defense is for when a commitment has already been made and you're already rationalizing it, like Sarah with Tim.
Yeah.
That's when you need the heart of hearts attack.
You have to ask yourself one critical question. Knowing what I know now, if I could go back in time, would I make the same choice?
And you have to listen to that very first feeling, that first flash of an answer that comes up before your brain starts trying to justify everything. That's your truest guide.
It's important to note, though, that these weapons aren't always used for bad things.
No, not at all. That Iowa Energy Conservation Study is a great example. They lowballed homeowners by promising newspaper publicity to get them to save energy. Then they took the publicity away.
And people conserved even more energy. Because they had built this new self-image of being responsible, energy-conscious citizens, the inner commitment took over.
Right. So if these techniques can be used for good, to help people save resources or quit bad habits, it raises a tough question. How do we balance the benefits of this kind of automatic compliance with the obvious dangers of mindless conformity?
And that leads us to think about the ethics of it all. Is it okay to use these predictable responses for the greater good?
A provocative thought to mull over.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. Hopefully you feel a little more armed against the psychological jujitsu of the world.